Hi, my name's Richard Duffy. I'm the Vice President of Partner Enablement and Strategy at Acumatica. And on behalf of all of our partners and all the Acumatica team right around the world, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for taking time to watch today's presentation. So what I'm going to do in today's presentation is I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of Acumatica. We're going to talk about the product and the problem that it's really been designed to solve. I'm going to give you an overview of the product, take you through some of the key areas that many of our existing customers really like and they find it helps them really boost their productivity. And then we're going to talk just a little bit at the end about Acumatica as an organization, because hopefully by then you'll be thinking, well, this product looks good, tell me a little bit about the company. So with that, let's dive in and let's take a look at our agenda in a little bit of detail. So again, my name is Richard Duffy. I have been doing enterprise resource planning and accounting software for around about 25 years now. I'm what my boss hopefully lovingly calls an enterprise resource planning dinosaur. So as I go through the evolution of enterprise resource planning, really I'm actually looking at this from a historical perspective, and I was kind of there as we go through each one of those steps. So I'll be talking quite a bit from experience as we go through today's presentation. Then, as I said, we're going to look at Acumatica as a solution. We're going to drill down and look at some of the key areas in the application. We're then going to have a look at a demonstration, and we're going to talk a little bit about why organizations are choosing Acumatica as a solution. And then we'll talk a little bit about where partners play into the Acumatica story. And of course, at the end of the presentation and at any time during the presentation, you can click on the Ask a Question button that you'll see coming up in the player. And you'll be able to send through any questions that you have for us. So hopefully that's going to align with your expectations for this session. So let's get going. So if you think about enterprise resource planning, and enterprise resource planning really for most small and mid-sized businesses started off as fundamentally accounting software. So when we talk about enterprise resource planning, and if you're sitting there thinking, well, how does that differ from accounting software? Well, it's really just in the breadth of the business processes that you can manage with enterprise resource planning versus accounting software. If you think about accounting software, fundamentally, accounting software was really about just tracking what had happened. Enterprise resource planning, as the name suggests, is really about taking the next step and taking advantage of the functionality that's in the software to enable you to be more deliberate about what you're doing in the business, to plan around how you're going to allocate the resources in your organization, hence the name Enterprise Resource Planning. But we started off with accounting software, and it was really back in the 80s when green screens were around, and some of you watching this will probably be aware and will probably remember the green screen technology. I know I certainly did. My first computer was an IBM PC, and the big challenge with the software that was running on those machines was that custom development was very, very expensive. They had very clunky user interfaces. They weren't that easy to use. The features and functionality were very limited. This was back in the days when people said, why would anybody need any more than 640K of RAM? And why? Because, well, that was all people could take advantage of, so the functionality in the software was very limited. So it was kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you like. But the other thing with those solutions was that they were expensive to maintain, and being a person who was running a partner organization back in those days, looking after customers running on that software, you could take my word for it, they were difficult to upgrade. So then we moved across into the 90s, and then what happened? We moved to this era of client server. So in the 80s, we had a situation where everything was basically sitting on one PC. Some of you may even remember, you had floppy disks. So your program was on one disk. If you were lucky, you had 2 floppy disk drives. Your program was on one disk, your data was on the other, and you swapped backwards and forwards between them. Then, you had a hard disk, but you were basically chained to that machine. So then we went to client server in the 90s. And what was client server? Client server was when fundamentally you had your programs on your local PC, but the data was all stored on a server which you connected to through a network cable. Okay, so Again, same challenge, expensive custom development. That network cable, basically, that kept you chained to your desktop. It was very hard to collaborate with partners and customers. We had the first generation of EDI, or electronic document interchange, where you were able to start sharing orders, shipping notices, and so on and so forth with your customers. But they were very, very basic systems back then. And one of the big challenges was with those applications, they didn't support what we call statelessness. Statelessness is when the connection between the client and the server is disconnected. In the client-server world, if you disconnected that network cable between the two, basically the entire system went down. These days, with web-based applications, we'll talk a bit more about this. The reason why they work is because we can now support this concept of statelessness. The web browser makes a request to the server, retrieves the information, and then you work with that information. And then when you're finished, you send the information back to the server. So it's not constantly connected. Okay? So hopefully that's clear. So then we moved into and I always like saying this, it kind of sounds funny, we moved to the turn of the century, and we started to see the development of web-based applications, but still some challenges we had. We had the challenge that they were difficult to customize. You had to pick a technology stack, if you like, from a particular vendor, and you had to build according to that technology stack. So that was good for the vendors because that enabled them to lock you into their technology, and to a certain extent that made it possible for them to lock you into a certain pricing and a data model. Bad for you as a customer because you lost the flexibility to be able to change, to be able to negotiate strongly because you had that vendor lock-in. The third challenge there was a lack of integration with those on-premise systems. So if I was using a web-based system, and the data was sitting out on somebody's web server somewhere, and I wanted to integrate that with a piece of software I was running on my local machine, the industry standards weren't that great. If there were any at all, they were very much in their infancy. And what that basically meant was that you had to be an expert in doing that integration. So it was very, very difficult to do that. And they were using native web-based interfaces. What do I mean by that? You had to choose your web browser and the technology that it supported, and you had to build accordingly. All right? So, if you were running on Internet Explorer, then that was usually the only web browser that software would run on. If you were running on Netscape Navigator, for those of you who can remember Netscape, then that was what you were locked into using. So again, we had those challenges. Now, what then happened? We went through a fundamental shift, if you like, in probably around about, the turn of the decade, 2010, where we started to see the advent of cloud-based enterprise resource planning. Now, just a word on the cloud. What is the cloud? Well, the cloud is fundamentally a scenario where you have a network of computers all loosely connected through a protocol called TCP/IP. This is the Internet Protocol. Now, the cloud refers to any server that is storing your data, and you connect to it through a web browser, or you connect to it using those Internet protocols like HTTP, which is the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or the secure version of that, HTTPS. And so this word cloud, it's really not a big deal. It just refers to having your data sitting on a server and you're accessing it through those protocols and through a web browser. So that means you can have two different kinds of clouds. You can have a private cloud, and a private cloud is where basically it's only your data. You're the only person, you're the only company that's sitting on that server. So you lose some of the advantages of cloud computing. One of the big advantages of cloud computing is when multiple people can share that resource, then bringing the cost down for everybody, but to do it securely, of course. And that's what public cloud is all about. So hopefully that's clear. It makes it a little bit easy for for you to understand, what the difference between these two things are. So anyway, 2010, Cloud ERP. We're really now in a situation where it is much easier to integrate and extend because these platforms that these applications were built on were built with that in mind. Being extensible, being easy to integrate, the standards were now in place so that different vendors could talk to each other's systems based on a set of standards. We then had a scenario where we had the technology to support what we call responsive design, which is where the application, and I'll show you this in our demonstration, the application automatically adjusts and redraws the screen depending on whether or not you're using a PC or if you're using an iPad or an iPhone or an Android device or whatever. So it automatically adapts to the screen size that you're using. We now have that scenario that I was talking about where we have both private and public clouds where these cloud ERP solutions can be deployed. But we also now start to see the advent of flexible deployment and pricing models, where you really start to take advantage of what we call utility computing. Let me put it to you this way. You don't pay for your electricity based on the number of people who live in your house. You pay for your electricity and your telephone and all these other things based on how much of the service you consume. So why shouldn't your software and your computing be the same way? Well, that's where we're at today. That's really what cloud computing is all about, where you're able to start taking advantage of these pay for what you use models. And that's really where we're at today with Acumatica. Now, interestingly, this point about flexible deployment and pricing models, that's there and it's available for everyone. But you know what? Some vendors have made a choice. They've made a decision that they don't want to give you a flexible deployment. You have to run on their cloud. And they don't want to give you a choice of pricing models. It's their way or the highway. Well, from our perspective with Acumatica, we don't believe that that's the right way to go forwards. And what we're really all about is helping you to unlock your business potential. Now, in order to unlock your business potential, we really had to disrupt some of these industry models. I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we go forwards. Before I do, though, one of the questions that often comes up in people's minds is they say, you know what, Richard, there are so many different choices that I can make. There are so many different accounting software or enterprise resource planning software packages out there at any given point in time. How do I choose which one's right for me? And many vendors, they will tell you that the best way to look at it is based on the number of employees that you have, how many users you want to have on the system, what kind of revenue you're doing, the volume of transactions that you're doing and so forth. Well, we believe there's a better way of doing that. If enterprise resource planning is really about automating business processes, then wouldn't it make more sense if you looked at it in the context of how complex or simple were the business processes that you're trying to manage? Now, we came up with this idea and we ran it past a couple of different analyst firms. And one of them, a company called Gartner, you may be familiar with, they really liked this approach and they kind of said to us, well, this makes a lot of sense to help people choose. And they, were kind of wondering why hadn't more enterprise resource planning vendors moved across to this model. And there's some things about Acumatica that make it very, very unique I'm going to talk about, which makes it easy to have this discussion. But you think about it. When you first start off as a small business, potentially you're not running any enterprise resource planning at all. You're just running accounting software, and it could be something as simple as QuickBooks. It could be the world's most popular accounting software program, which is Microsoft Excel, which is just basically using spreadsheets to keep a record of where the money came from and where it went, hopefully. So it was really focused on those basic business processes. So then you kind of grew. Probably you had more people who came on board, and just managing those standard business processes became a little bit more complex. So you had to move to that next level where you started to move into the enterprise resource planning space. So maybe you would have purchased your first ERP product. So that's when those business processes are simple. You are just doing your invoicing, you're doing your purchase ordering, but you don't have a lot of complex workflows or processes in place. Then you move to the next model, which is what we call moderate business process complexity. So what's this? This is when you start wanting to generate workflows where on the basis of rules that you set up in the organization, transactions flow automatically around the organization. Potentially you're operating in an industry that has government regulation. You have to comply with, the Healthcare Portability Act. You have to comply with, if you're producing food or pharmaceuticals, you have to comply with HACCP requirements that specify the way in which you track and manage the quality process as products move through the supply chain from sourcing of raw materials to production and then out into distribution, so you can start doing product recalls. So if you know that one batch of your raw materials was faulty, you can track that all the way back through the entire system and issue a product recall with a high degree of certainty that you're getting out to all of the right customers. So that's a more complex business process. And there's lots of different examples. I've just picked a couple to help you understand. And then, of course, you move into the high levels of complexity where you have potentially huge manufacturing environments, really large distribution supply chains where, maybe you're a Walmart or a Toyota or a Ford or a General Motors, where you've got really big complex organizations and complex organizational structures, and the way transactions flow through those businesses is very complex. Well, that's where we're talking about that high business complexity. So then if you look at where all these applications map in, where does Acumatica fit? Well, we believe Acumatica fits squarely in for those organizations who are moving towards the upper level of the simple business process complexity and at the lower to midpoint of the moderate business process complexity. But interestingly, as soon as we come up with a definition, we find a customer who blows that definition out of the water. We find a small customer who's decided, because they really like the way that Acumatica works, even though their business processes are very, very simple, they've made a decision to purchase Acumatica because they want to be in a situation where the software they purchase today will be there as they grow going forwards. And by the same token, we have large organizations who they look at Acumatica and they say, you know what, we really like the product. We really like the pricing model. It gives us much better options than some of the other players in the market. And then they really push the product and start doing a lot of work with what we call our Cloud XRP platform, which is the platform on which Acumatica is built. And then they say, well, Acumatica is actually going to fit our organization because you deliver all of the core components that we need out of the box, but you've got this really rich development environment that we can then build our additional components on top of. So again, these are just guidelines. And this is where our partners fit into the picture, and I'll explain more about partners a little later. But the partner will come in and help you understand, well, what is the best way to deploy a solution? What are the components that are going to make sense? How do you start getting value immediately from your investment? And then what approach should you take as you move forwards through the deployment life cycle of your solution? All right? So, summary of that, what's it about? It's really about, think about the complexity of your business processes first. And here's why the number of users and the number of employees in your organization doesn't matter when you're looking at Acumatica. With Acumatica, we do not charge you per user. When you become an Acumatica customer, it doesn't matter whether you've got 5, 50, or 500 users, because our pricing model is based on a consumption model where you pay for the computing power that you use. You can be now in a situation where you can say, if I've got 50 people in my organization, I can give them all a username. Many of you might be familiar with using some other solution today. Maybe you're in the situation where you're worrying about, well, do I use concurrent users or named users? Do I minimize the number of users I buy because I'm trying to control my budget? Do I lock some people out who would really be helped by having access to the information, but because the vendor is charging me for all these user licenses, I just can't afford it? With Acumatica, you don't have to worry about it because we don't charge per user. So that's one of the reasons why the whole number of users, number of employees model just doesn't apply when you're looking at a solution like Acumatica. So what are we all about? You might have heard me a little earlier talking about helping you unlock your business potential, because that's what this software should do. All right? Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, well, gee, today my life will be complete if I go out and buy some enterprise resource planning software. Unless you're somebody like me, which is a sad commentary on my life. But, there's really three things that we've looked at that people are trying to do. The first thing, which is really where the accounting software component of enterprise resource planning comes in, it's about taking control of your business. Being in a situation where you have visibility into what's going on inside the organization, and as a result of having that visibility, you're able to then put into place the controls, checks and balances, and manage the processes that you need so that you can sleep better at night, knowing what's going on inside the organization. And that's great, but in all honesty, any piece of software on the market, any piece of accounting software or enterprise resource planning software should be able to help you do that. That's not where the differentiation is. We believe the differentiation comes into these next two areas, which is around enabling you to play to your strengths. What do I mean by this? Playing to your strengths is really about looking at what is it that makes your organization unique. Very difficult these days to differentiate on the basis of products, because many products today are commoditized. It's very difficult to differentiate on the basis of price. Why? Because there's always somebody who's willing to go out of business faster than you are. What do I mean by that? There's always somebody who will sell a product for less or cheaper or whatever the case may be. So you then really have to look at how do you do business? What is it that's unique about the way that your business processes run? And this is what we mean by enabling you to play to your strengths. So that when there are new opportunities in the market that might require you to change some of those business processes, to respond quickly to those changes in the business processes, this is really where this ability to play to your strengths comes in. And why can we give you that capability to play to your strengths? Because Acumatica, and I'll show you this in the demonstration shortly, Acumatica has a very, very easy way of tailoring the software specifically to your business requirements. Okay? The third area, empowering your people. For most organizations, the most expensive resource that you have inside your organization are your people. How do you take them away from the mundane, boring, non-value-added processes that they are running today? How do you give them the ability to work anywhere, anytime, on any device? Well, you need to be looking at solutions like Acumatica, because that's exactly what we do. We give you access to the software in a way that makes sense, with different ways of being able to interact with the software. And I'm going to show you a couple in our demonstration. So really empowering your people to get the best from them is really one of the key things that we're focused on at Acumatica. So there are our three core value points that we believe an Acumatica solution can help you address. So with that, what I'd like to do is I would like to give you a quick overview of the core components in the Acumatica product. So we have the product broken up into what we call suites of functionality that kind of make sense. And different organizations purchase these different product suites. Just about everybody, though, starts off with financial management. This is everything you need to take control of your business. This is your general ledger, your accounts receivable, your accounts payable, and so on. Organizations then might look to add the project accounting functionality for those companies who need to track and manage projects and track and manage income and expenditure against those projects effectively. We then have distribution management if you're buying or selling a product, if you're working with logistics, with supply chains, where you have products moving throughout those supply chains. Distribution management is a suite that you would then want to add to the solution. And of course, we all have customers. I think that's fair to say. And this is one of the reasons why most of our customers today choose our customer management suite, which contains the customer relationship management functionality in Acumatica. So they're the core product suites. In my demonstration, I'm not going to drill down in huge detail on each one of those, but on this same website where you're watching this presentation, you will find detailed demonstrations that do drill down into each one of those areas, but not in this session. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take you through that overview demonstration that we were discussing just a little earlier. Okay, so let's take a look at that now. So what we're looking at right now is the main user interface of Acumatica. Now, the first thing you're going to notice about Acumatica, as I mentioned before, is that the application is completely browser-based. So what does that mean? The only piece of software you need to be able to access Acumatica is a web browser. So right now I'm using Google Chrome. So all I have to do is put in my URL, and let's go do this right from the very start. If I just put in the URL that I've got, in this case I'm going to use p1.tryacumatica.com, and there's a number of these different URLs, and then I press enter, and you'll see I then get my main screen. It then asks me, all right, specifically, who are you as a user? So I'm going to log in as the admin user. Now, the admin, as far as we're concerned for our demonstration today, is God. So the admin can do anything that they want. So if I'm going through and I'm showing you certain pieces of functionality, you're thinking, gee, I don't necessarily want everybody in the company to do that. That's fine. We'll show you exactly how that can be controlled and managed within the system. Now, the next thing you need to be aware of is Acumatica is fully multi-company. So you can set up as many different companies as your license allows, and then you just choose those companies from this list. But then I'm just going to choose my standard company. And by the way, the standard password that I've put in, because this is a demo system, it's just 123. You would never ever use a password that's that short. But we want to make it quick and easy for people to get into, because guess what? See this URL, p1.tryacumatica.com? Well, you can access that yourself, and you can see exactly what I am seeing, and you can try the software for yourself as well. But anyway, there it is. I go in here, and then I specify that I want to go and log in. Now, what you're then going to see is you're going to see the main screen in Acumatica. Now, important point to note, Acumatica is role-based. What do I mean by role-based? Well, think about the people inside your organization. They all perform different roles. Maybe I've got a sales manager. Maybe I've got a financial controller. Maybe I have a warehouse manager. So the tasks that I do are dependent on the role that I fulfill. So Acumatica is designed so that it can be configured according to that particular role. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm configured as a sales manager. So the system goes in and it automatically knows to bring me into my dashboards. Now, what are these dashboards? Well, the dashboards are completely user-definable collections of views into the information in the system. Remember, I talked about the fact that Acumatica allows you to take control of your business. Well, in order to take control of your business, you need visibility. So we have these dashboards, which are almost like a cockpit that you have when you're flying a plane, for example, or the dashboard that you have on your car. Now, this dashboard contains all the key information that you need to see in order to keep a track of what's going on in the organization. Now, once you're in Internet Explorer or Google Chrome or Safari if you're running on the Mac, or Firefox if you're running on Linux, you can take the screen, if you want to maximize it, and you can go into full screen mode. So I can go here into my settings, and I'm able to basically adjust any of the settings that control how the screen is laid out, so I can see more or less of the screen. So if I want to go to full screen mode, I could just click on here, and you'll see it's telling me, hey, you've just gone full screen, And to exit from full screen, all you need to do is press F11. Or I can come in here and I can just access the screen again. You'll see when I move up the top, it says exit full screen. Why am I pointing that out? Well, basically, if you know how to use a browser, you know how to use Acumatica. And if you're looking at it and you're saying, well, gee, I can see there's some scroll bars here that I really don't want to have those scroll bars. I'd like to see more of my information. Well, again, inside your web browser, you'll have the ability to zoom in and out. So, depending on how big or how small you like the information to be, you can control all of that completely. Now, of course, these different areas in my dashboard, these are widgets, and you can have as many or as few of these widgets on your dashboard as you like. It's really a matter of you just deciding how you want to customize the screen to meet your own requirements. All right? Now, whilst we're talking about customizing the screen, it's important to understand that, as I talked about with the evolution of ERP, and we talked about this idea of responsive design, different screen sizes, what Acumatica does is it automatically adapts to the screen size that you're working on. But you can also, for example, if I want to get rid of this menu, I can go up here and I can click on this little button, and that hides the navigation pane and maximizes the amount of space I've got here. But of course I could bring that back at any time. But an example, let's say I'm using my iPad and I'm out on the road and I want to go into my distribution, I want to go into sales orders, and I want to enter a sales order because I'm sitting out in front of a customer. So all I do is I go into my sales orders function just by going up here to distribution. Then I choose sales orders, and then I choose sales orders down here in my entry screen, and here it is. I've got my sales order screen open. I can hide my navigation pane, but you'll see down the bottom here, see I've got all my different tabs. I've got my document details, tax details, financial settings, and so on. Well, watch what happens when I adjust this screen. As I resize my web browser, watch what happens with these tabs down the bottom. Okay, as soon as I get to a certain point, there you go. You'll see the payments tab's just disappeared. Now the shipments tab has disappeared. And now the discounts tab has disappeared. So they've all kind of adjusted down the bottom. Well, they haven't disappeared. They've just been hidden because there's not enough screen space to show it. So I can click on here and I can jump to that payment screen. Just the same as I can when these are all down here. I can go here and I can also then select the shipment screen. Or I can go and select the discount details screen because they're all there. They've just been moved to maximize the space. The same as I can go here once I've finished putting in the information in my order at the top level, who is the customer and so on. I can just click on here and then this information is maximized for me as well. So everywhere you see these little chevrons, that's telling you that there's hidden information that you can bring down and you can put away. Now, all of these buttons as well are very, very touch-friendly. So the entire system's been designed so you can, using your tablet, even if you're just using a touchscreen PC, you can navigate right throughout the entire system just using your finger and your touch screen. So obviously I'm using a MacBook in this particular instance, but and it doesn't have a touch screen. But in one of our later demonstrations, I'm actually going to show you utilizing the application on a iPad. So anyway, that's what we mean when we talk about responsive design. And this is the hallmark of the latest generation of cloud-based applications, as they give you that capability. So let's just go back out into our full screen, and you can see now I'm out in full screen. Nothing is hidden away except when I choose it to be. So my navigation pane, I can bring that out back. So my navigation pane, you can see I can bring that out, I can put it away, I can do anything I want with that. All right, so let's then go back to our home screen, and I can get to the home screen at any time just by clicking on the Acumatica logo. So this is what we call responsive design. It really gives you the ability to adapt to basically any device using your standard web browser. So let's then go back and in order to jump back to my home screen at any particular point in time, all I have to do is click on my Acumatica logo up in the top left-hand corner. Now, by the way, because Acumatica is a web-based application, it's just like a giant website. And like you can with any website, the application can be customized. So if I want to remove the Acumatica logo, if I want to put your company logo on there, if I want to change how the home screen looks, even for example, when I go back here and I log out, if I want to change the picture and the images that come up on this home screen, I can certainly do that. I'm going to show you some other videos where we've taken this screen and we've completely tailored it to meet specific customers' requirements. But I can go straight back in, I can choose login, and you'll see I'm back in and I am connected. Now here's an interesting point for you. This is a cloud-based application. That means that really, to all intents and purposes, you don't care where the data sits. Now, right now, where I'm recording this video, I'm sitting in San Francisco. But the server that I'm accessing with all of this information on it, well, guess where that is? It's actually located in Australia. So, as I'm navigating throughout the entire system, you'll see how quick it is. That's because Acumatica has been designed specifically to reduce network latency, to reduce the amount of bandwidth that you're using, and to work over network connections that have a higher degree of latency. That's the amount of time it takes for data to move from your client across to the server machine. All right, so important to understand that, and this is incredibly fast, even though the server is across on the other side of the world from me. So what does that mean to you? If you've got people operating in multiple offices all around the world, well, Acumatica is a great solution for you to be able to give them access, because all they need is just the URL and a username, and they can log onto the system. Now, just while we're talking about that for a second, a couple of the other things that you can do from a security perspective. Everything in Acumatica is able to be encrypted using the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or HTTP. Now, there is a secure version of that called HTTPS. And all you need to do is just switch on a certificate for that to then encrypt all the information that goes backwards and forwards. But there's other things that you can do as well. So for example, on this screen that I'm looking at here, this is just using one-factor authentication. Something I know, my username and password. But what I'm able to do as well is I can use what's called two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication is where it's something you know and something you have. So I actually have my iPhone, and on my iPhone I have a couple of different applications that what they do is they will generate a unique code for me that applies for 30 seconds, and I can set the system up so that the very first screen it asks me for, before I even get to this screen, is it will ask me for my two-factor authentication. So then all I have to do is I just simply go into the application that I have running on my iPhone, and you can't see it right now, but this particular application that I use is called Google Authenticator, and it automatically generates a code for me. And later, when we're doing some of our mobility demonstrations, I'll actually show you that in operation, just so you can see exactly how that works. Okay? But then it generates a code, I put the code in, and then I get my username and password screen. So that's called two-factor authentication. Many of you are probably using that with your internet banking today, where the bank gives you a token. It's exactly the same concept. You just have to decide how secure you want the system to be. All right? So let's log back in, and what I'd like to do right now is I'd like to take you for a little bit of a tour around the rest of the user interface, just so you understand how quick and easy it is to navigate through Acumatica. Now remember, I said Acumatica is basically just a giant website. Now when you're building websites, you have what's called a sitemap. And the sitemap controls how people navigate throughout the entire system. So in Acumatica, we have a sitemap as well. So for example, this is the top level of our sitemap, is everything that you see across here along the top menu bar. So for example, when I select distribution, and remember I talked about the fact that we have the different suites in Acumatica, these are the different suites that we have. So I can choose my distribution suite. I then go to the next level in the sitemap, and that then shows me, okay, well, inside the distribution suite, you have an inventory module, you have a sales order entry module, you have a purchase order module, and part of that purchase order module, there is a purchase requisition process. So then when I select sales orders, it then takes me to the next level in the sitemap. And then that says, okay, well, under your sales orders, there's a few different things that you can do. And you'll see we have these different tabs here in the navigation panel. So I've got my work area. This is where I go in and I enter my transactions. So for example, if I want to enter a sales order, I just click there on sales orders and I'm ready to go. If I want to create an invoice, I choose invoices, and then up comes the invoice screen. If I want to do payments, let's say, God forbid, somebody should pay me, then I can go in here and I can receive the payment. So everything I need is all in this one screen. Now, they're one-off transactions. Okay, I'm going in and I'm entering a sales order, then I enter another sales order and another sales order. But what if you need to process documents en masse? You need to process things in a batch. Well, you can certainly do that with Acumatica. And that's what this other tab is for, the Processes tab. So let's say, for example, I've just spent the whole day entering sales orders. So now it's time to get ready to pick and pack those sales orders. So what I can do is I can go in here and I can say process orders. Then what you'll see here in my process orders, it now gives me the ability to come in and say, well, what do you want to do? Well, I now want to create my shipments. And then it says, okay, on what basis do you want to do that? Do you want to do it on the basis of the shipment date? Do you want to do it on the basis of the starting date? Do you want to do it on the basis of the shipment date, the order date, or the cancellation date? All these different parameters that you can configure, and then you can even go ahead and you can set these up into schedules. So you can schedule all these activities so that they happen automatically. So then once I've selected my date range, and you can see we've got date pickers here, nice and easy to use, I can go right back to the beginning of 2013 if I want to. So I can say from January 1st, 2013 to today's date, and then I hit refresh. And what it will do is it will go all the way back to 2013. Now, we're a very efficient organization, so I don't have any orders left over from 2013. I've just got my 2014 orders here that are ready to process. So I can simply just click there and it selects both my orders, or I can click line by line and select those orders. Now, the good thing about this is, once you're familiar with navigating your way through Acumatica, every screen then becomes really, really easy to understand. Why? Because all of the screens are laid out exactly the same way. All right, you have a header, and then you have your grid information. Now, the good thing about this is, anywhere where you have this grid information, what are you going to find? You're going to find a couple of options. You're going to find this option to resize to fit to the screen. All right, so you saw, or maybe you didn't see, but the scroll bar down the bottom has just disappeared. That's because I hit this fit to screen option. and it automatically readjusted all of these columns for me so that, funnily enough, they fit to the screen. So then if I click over here to hide my navigation pane, you'll now see I've got more screen real estate to work with. So again, I just click fit to screen and everything automatically adjusts. Again, see how fast that is. All right, it's incredibly quick. I can then start making some of these fields a little bit bigger if I want. So again, all I have to do is drag them around and I can move the field to wherever I want. So if I want the description and I want that across here, you'll see it just gives me the little red arrows and says, well, that's where the description's going. Maybe I want the location name and I want that back here. Well, I just drag and drop it into place. Then I'm going to start sounding like a late night television salesperson here, but wait, there's more. What you can do is you can go ahead and you can then specify every single one of these columns. Well, do I want to filter on this? Do I want to sort on it? Do I want to say, show me all the records that start with a certain value, or sort it in descending order, or sort it in ascending order? And of course, just one click on this little arrow will bring up those options for me. Now, the great thing about this is I can then go ahead and I can set up a filter just by clicking on this filter option here. I can then save that filter as a default, and then I can pick it from my list of filters. A lot of information in a very short period of time there, and maybe a little bit too much. But what I wanted to do was make sure that you understand how easy it is to tailor the system specifically to the way you work. We give you a best practice deployment of the software that gets you started. But then as you get familiar with the software, you can decide, well, you know, I want to change things around. I want to tailor it exactly to the way that I like to work. With Acumatica, you don't need to be a programmer to do that. You just need to be able to use a web browser. All right? So continuing on with the idea of, but wait, there's more. You can also, anywhere where you see this little Excel icon, you can take all the information in your grid and you can export it out. Let me give you another example of that. I'm going to open up my navigation pane again, and let's say, for example, I don't want to process my orders right now. I want to go and do some reports. So again, I simply click on the Reports tab here in the navigation pane. And I'll say, you know what, I would like to get a list of my sales order details by customer. Important point. The system's popping up and it's just saying, hey, Richard, you've actually made some changes on this previous screen. Are you sure you want to leave the page because you haven't saved them yet? And I'm going to say, nope, that's fine. I do want to leave the page. So then it now brings me into my sales order details by customer report. Now, again, every time I create this, or every time I go into the report, I can set new options. But what I can also do is I can go in here and I can set my parameters. So let's say I want to go back to, let's go back to January 1st, 2014, and that'll work. And let's say I'm in a particular warehouse. Let's say I'm in the Virginia warehouse. Okay, so I work out of the Virginia retail warehouse. So what I can do is I can now go and I can create this as a template. And then I can make this either the default template for everyone or default template for me. So I make this my default template, and then if I want to make it for everyone, then I can go ahead and I can say shared. And then I give the template a name, and then everybody can take advantage of that template. In this case, I'm just going to make it my default. All right? Then I go in here and I say save template. It asks me for a template name. So I'll just say this is my Virginia warehouse. Yes, Virginia, there is a warehouse. And so I'll say OK to that. And that's now saved. That's That's me creating my template. And you can end up with as many templates as you want. So all these different parameters, different sorts and filters, different ways of printing and emailing this information. You can even have different report versions. So every time you generate this report, you can tell the system to take a snapshot of that version of the report. So it's basically taking a point in time. How did you get point-in-time reports with other systems? You printed them out and you went back and you looked for them. With Acumatica, you don't have to do that. Are we at the point yet where we're totally paperless? No, but we're getting awfully close, okay? And this is an example of that kind of advanced functionality which you should expect from your software, because this is the kind of thing that we're now able to do. All right, so go back to my report parameters. That's all great, so that's fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to choose to run my report. And then it generates the report. Now in this particular instance, I'm looking at this and it's not showing me any data. Well, why is that? Very, very simple. I can just go back. Now, how do I go back? Well, would I use the back button in my web browser? Yes, I would. Okay, so that will then take you back to the last fully functional screen that you were in. So I can go in here and I can look at my shipment details or my sales order details by customer again. And what do you see? There's my template. Well, this template is not showing me everything that I want. So it could well be that maybe there are no orders in the Virginia warehouse. So let's just hit the delete button there and get rid of that. I don't have to override the template. It's not going to save the template again with this change. This is just a one-off. So now I'll run the report. Now I'm getting some data. So you can see here's all of the sales order details. It's just none of them were in the Virginia warehouse. Okay, I've got them in my retail, my Virginia wholesale, but nothing in the Virginia retail office. So there's my report. So that's great. I can maximize that out and I can now move through this data. Anywhere where you see the field underlined, well, guess what? Even from the report, with one click, you can drill down to the original transaction. And there it is. There's my original transaction. There's all the details behind that. But I can also, if I want to, I can go ahead now and I can generate this document as a PDF. So now it's automatically created that document for me as a PDF, and I can print it out, I can save it, I can share it, I can do whatever I want. All right? I can then go back as well. I can refresh that at any particular point in time. Or I can go back to my parameters again and I can choose new parameters, or I can run the report again from scratch. Now, a couple of other things. If I've got multiple pages, moving through the pages is really easy. I've got these navigation buttons up at the top. So it makes it very, very simple to navigate my way through all of my information once it's in my grid. I can print this information now. I can hit the send button, and what that will do is that will bring up inside Acumatica our email functionality, because funnily enough, Acumatica will integrate with pretty much any email server that you are using, as long as it uses the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, or SMTP, which is pretty much every mail server in the world. But we also have some extended and enhanced integration through to Microsoft Exchange, so that you can take emails that come in and emails that you send out and automatically attach those as activities to your customer records. So you'll see that's exactly what's happening here. It's generating an email activity. So it's saying at this point in time, you are sending an email, and it's coming from me. I'm the admin at revision2.com. That's my company. And who do I want to send it to? So I can click here and it gives me a list of all of my people inside the organization, but also all of my customers. So let's say, for example, I just want to send this to the CEO, who is Michael Andrews. So I go ahead and I choose Michael, and I can say, here's the current sales report with details. And then if I want to, I can get more sophisticated and I can put in some rich information into the message, because this is going to go as a HTML message. So if I want to put formatting in here, if I want to embed links to web pages, I can do all of that. Now you're thinking, all right, that's great, but Richard, where's the report? Okay, great question. You'll see the report's actually attached up here as a file. So if I click on Files, okay, I'll say, yes, I do want to proceed. So I save those changes, and there's the report. So the report's going to go as an attachment to this email. It's not going to go as an embedded file. What does that mean? Basically, you're reducing the amount of traffic you're sending over the network. You can take this PDF file, and you'll notice down the bottom, in this area here, this is called a status bar, just down the bottom. Now watch what happens down here when I hover over this file. See there, it comes up with p1.try Acumatica, blah, 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 get file, and so on and so forth. If I want to, all I need to do is I can go into my help and I can say that I want to get a link, all right? So I can get a link to this document, and then I can send that document, that link to that document, through any other way that I choose. I can embed it into a PowerPoint presentation if I want. As long as I've got access to the Acumatica system, it's going to ask me for my username and password, I can access it from there. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll give you an example of that in a little while where we can do that. But that's it. I basically got my email there, and all I have to do now is hit send. But I can also record some additional actions behind this. I can select the source where it's coming from, and once it's been sent, there's other things that I can do inside the system. But that's it for now. All right. So then I'll just hit send, and away it goes. That email has now gone to the CEO. He can open it up. When he opens it up, guess what? He's got that drill down functionality. Let me give you that example that I was telling you about just a second ago. Let's say, for example, I am looking at this document. So it's a sales order, and it is a sales order for a Kindle, and it's going to the US bartending school. Well, let's say I want to send a note to somebody asking them to take some action around this. All I do is I go here into help, and I say get link. When I get that link, it gives me two versions. One if the person is outside the company, and one if they're inside the company. So I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to say copy. And then I'm going to go here and I'm going to say send. Again, it opens up the email activity, but this time the URL is embedded in the email. So I'm going from admin@revision2.com. I'm going to send it to myself just for the sake of the exercise. Now, if I've got literally thousands and thousands of customers that could come up here, again, I can go in here and I can just start using my search functionality. So I can type in admin, and what does the system then do? It will narrow it down, and it will show me all the people that match to that string. So as much as you can put in, that's what it will show you. All right? Or let's say I wanted to send it to Richard Duffy. So I would just start typing RICH, and away it goes. If I wanted to send it to somebody else inside the organization, again, I've got total flexibility over that. Or if it's just a one-off to somebody outside the organization, let's say I want to send it to rduffyhome@gmail.com, then off it will go. It will go out, and it will go to that person's email address. So I can say, here's the sales order for you to check. And then when I say send, what's it going to do? It's automatically going to send that email out to that person's email address. Now they're then going to open up that email, and you'll see that, well, I'll show you in a minute actually. When they open up that email, there's going to be a hyperlink. They just click on that hyperlink, it'll open up the Acumatica web page, prompt them for their username and password. So they've got to have a username and password to be able to get into the system. As long as they've got that and they've got the right to view that information, then it will take them in. So if you're sitting there thinking, well, what if it's the person who doesn't have access to it? Well, they won't be able to log on. So I can send them that link, but the link won't do them any good because they've got to be able to log on and access the system. But here's the good thing about Acumatica. Remember, as I said in our presentation when I was taking you through the PowerPoint slides, we don't charge for the number of users that you have using your Acumatica system. That means that you can have access, or you can grant access to the system through a portal that's already included with the software. You can give access to all of your customers, and they can come online and they can access their information directly from Acumatica without you having to do any customization, without you having to buy extra software from an external company, tie all these bits and pieces together, which is what you have to do with many of the applications available on the market today. With Acumatica, we provide that customer self-service portal functionality for you out of the box. All right? So, there we go. There's my activity that I've created. And again, at any particular point in time, you can simply click here on the activities and you can see if there are any activities that have happened that are linked to this sales order, which is where I got to in the first place. And remember, how did I get to that sales order? Got to that sales order from my report. So I've got that drill down functionality. Let's take one step further. I've got my report, but you know what? I'm the kind of person who walks around with a sign above my head saying spreadsheets are my life. You can give me any information you like as long as you give it to me in a spreadsheet and I'll be happy. So all I do is I go here and I choose export, and it automatically exports this out to an Excel spreadsheet for me. I click save, and you'll see because we're operating in a web browser, it now gives me that file and downloads it for me, just the same as if I downloaded a file from the internet. So I then select that file, I open it up in Microsoft Excel, and there it is. There is that same report already exported out and formatted for me into Microsoft Excel. So now I can take all my Excel skills and I can start adding additional information into my Excel spreadsheet. All right? So that's a report that's been formatted up automatically for me. So I'm going to close that down. So that's an example of using that reporting. So how did we get to there? Remember, we went to distribution, I went into sales orders, and then I navigated here to the reports. One other thing that you can access here from the navigation panel as well, if you have the rights, is your configuration screen. And this is where I go and I set up all these different preferences and all the different order types. This is really where you start to see the power and the flexibility of an application like Acumatica. We like to talk about it as being as simple as you want, but as complex as you need. So what does that mean? If you just have a very standard sales order entry process, then you would just set up one sales order type. But you can set up multiple order types for your sales orders, and I'm going to leave this page and go into the order types page. And you can see I've already got a whole range of these different order types. Now, why would I have these different order types? Well, these different order types have different rules and different parameters and different settings behind them. So, for example, I've got an order type which is a quote. And you can see I can specify all kinds of information, the numbering sequence, how many days I want to keep it for, and then all these other parameters. Okay, now if the parameter isn't relevant to this, okay, then I can't click on it. But the parameters that are relevant, I do have access to. So all of this information, posting settings, and then I can go in and I can even set these things up as a template. Now, in Acumatica, you have this functionality called automation. And what is automation? Automation is basically a series of workflows. So right now, I've got an automation behavior called quote. And that tells the system, if I pick this automation behavior called quote, it's going to fire off a series of processes in the background which you can build. I'm not going to take you through that in today's presentation, because that's probably a little bit more detail than you need to make the decision as to whether or not you want to keep looking in more detail at the Acumatica solution. But that workflow automation is there, and you can tailor that to your specific requirements. All right? So not only do you have those workflows, you have a whole range of other things that you can do with your order types. So I can go back to my general settings, and then I can make some changes, and then I can save that. All right? So that's an example of that level of functional flexibility that you have inside Acumatica. So that's great, and that's all about getting data into the system. But how do I get data out? Well, we've seen how we get data out using the reporting functionality. But for a lot of people, they say, well, what if I want to tailor that information specifically to my requirements? How do I do that? How easy is it to do that in Acumatica? Well, as you would expect, the good news is it's really, really easy. All I need to do is I can go across here into my system settings. And I go here, funnily enough, to an area called customization. Now with the customization, I can create a customization project which groups all of my customizations together and allows me to then save those customizations and apply them to a different system, or just group those customizations together so I can switch them on or off as a group. So, for example, if something is not working the right way in the product after you've done your customizations, you can just switch those customizations off. All right? Check. Is it now working correctly? It is. Then it's something I did in my customization. So that's very, very important, giving you the ability to quickly toggle between before changes and after changes. Again, part of the power and flexibility of the Acumatica application that is all compiled, if you like, on the fly, versus other applications where it's a big deal to switch on those customizations and then switch them off again. But what I want to do is I want to create what we call a generic inquiry. So I go here and I specify generic inquiry. Now in best television chef mode, here's one I've created earlier. So if I go in here and I look for an inquiry title, let's say I want to see all my sales orders and quotes. So I can pick this generic inquiry. Now, this is the design mode. All right? So this is where I'm actually specifying how the generic inquiry will be created. When I want to run it, very different process. I just select run and it goes ahead and it executes. So for example, I can go here and I can say view the inquiry, and it then shows me that inquiry, and there's all my data. But for the purpose of the demonstration, we want to go back and we want to go in, and I want to show you how we are editing that inquiry. So let's go back, and we're now back at our generic inquiry screen. So there it is. So this generic inquiry is going to pull sales orders and quotes. So it needs to get information from my customer table, and it needs to get information from my sales order table. I can go in here and I can specify how are those tables related, what are the fields that link them together. Do I want to put any parameters in here? So at runtime, when somebody runs this generic inquiry, it gives them options. That's basically what these are. Select a starting date and a closing date, specify the value. So again, it's almost like you're creating code, but you don't have to know a programming language, okay? Very, very easy. What are the conditions that I want to put in? So this is like I'm building the query, this and this, or this value or that value, and so on. How do I want that grouped? How do I want the data sorted? And then, what specific information do I want to see in the result? So for example, I'm seeing order type, order number, status, account name. Let's say I want to use this generic inquiry for doing follow-ups with a customer. Well, what's one of the pieces of information that might be important to me? Well, maybe a phone number. So I can go in here and I can click on the plus field to add a row. I then go in here and I say, okay, specifically, where do I want this information to come from? Well, the phone number is going to be attached to the customer table. So I go in here and say customer. And then it's going to ask me, all right, which field from the customer file do you want to grab? So I simply go through here and I find that particular information. So I'm looking for the phone number. So you might be looking at this and you're going, well, hang on, where is the phone number? Well, there is no phone number against that. Well, that's because that information about the phone number is actually stored in a different table. So all I would have to do is just go back here to my tables and add that particular table to my report. So again, I can sort this by name and I can do a search. So it's very, very quick and very, very easy to add the information you need to your generic inquiries. But for now, let's ignore that and let's just go ahead now and we'll view our inquiry. Again, it's telling you, hey, Richard, you've made changes. Are you sure you want to abandon those changes? And I'll say, yep, I want to leave that page, and it takes me to the sales orders and quotes. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but this menu is actually changing when that happened. When I said run the generic inquiry, this menu has taken me down here into the sales orders menu, into the audit area under our reports, and it's running the sales orders and quotes. Well, why is that? That's because this generic inquiry, when it was created, we told it that that's where we wanted it to go in the sitemap. So see, I've got this sitemap location, audit. So if I expand this out, you'll see it's in my revision 2 company. It's in my distribution module up the top here, okay? It's in my reports area, again, across to the side, and it's in my audit navigation panel. And if I scroll down, you'll see there it is, sales orders and quotes. So let's say, for example, I wanted to have this in a different location. Let's say I wanted to put it in the work area. And I wanted to put it down here where I enter in my sales orders, shipments, invoices, and so on and so forth, because I might just want to be able to create it quickly from there. So all I do is I just double click on that. I select that sitemap location, and then I hit save. That's now done. So when I go into distribution and I go into sales orders, you'll now see there it is. There's my sales orders and quotes generic inquiry. One click and it goes ahead and it runs that for me. Quick, simple, and easy. Here I go again, but wait, there's more. One click on the Excel button, and what does this do? This is now taking all of that information and it's spitting it out for me into Microsoft Excel. Now it's doing a little bit more this time than the previous example I gave you. I'm going to go ahead and save that. That previous example was a report, so it had formatting and layout and everything like this. The generic inquiry is just data, or data, depending on your accent. So it's just data. So when I open up this view of that information, it's just giving it to me in a grid like this. Now, important point to note. Remember, we talked about the fact that Acumatica uses this concept of web services. What is a web service? A web service is just basically a way of putting up a location on the web that external applications can securely talk to send and receive information from. Well, when we pump this generic inquiry out into Microsoft Excel, it automatically builds a link to a web service that's then sitting there on the internet. What does that mean? That means I can now take this Excel spreadsheet, I can save it on my local PC, and then when I'm on the other side of the world, sitting in my hotel room, in the airport lounge, or whatever the case may be, if I just want to update the information that's in here, I don't need to go into Acumatica. I just open up my Excel. It's going to give me this warning, be careful. You want to be sure you want to do this? And I'll say, yes, I do want to enable my editing. And now here's my next security warning. It's saying, hey, external data connections have been disabled. So by default, Excel disables the ability to go and retrieve that data externally. I know it's a document I trust, so I enable my content. What then happens? If I want to make sure I'm looking at the very latest version of this data, then all I do is I go here to data and I go and say refresh all. All right? The system is now asking me for my username and password. So again, it's validating that I am able to access this data. Because not only in Acumatica do we control access to the main system, we can also set access controls at the database level. So in this case, I'm going to say, yep, I'll put in my username admin and my password, and I'll say OK. And then the system will go ahead and it's just done a refresh on that data. So now, without me having to go back into Acumatica, I've got the very latest version of the data and I'm carrying it with me. Pretty cool. Well, I think it is. But then, as I said in my other presentation, I'm an ERP dinosaur. I remember back when green screens were state of the art. And having this kind of capability in a piece of software is absolutely awesome. Not only can I export that data out, but in Acumatica, you can also create your data in spreadsheets and use that spreadsheet to push data in. It's a little bit too detailed for today's demonstration, but just wanted you to be aware that that can happen both ways. So that can be securely managed as well. Now, just as an FYI, this is a one-way retrieval of data. If I go in here and I start changing the numbers, all right, let's say I change this number to 3,450. I'm feeling pretty good about that. The system will know, Excel will know that I've made that change, so you've got a complete audit trail there. But if I hit save, it's not pushing it back into the accounting system, all right? This is a point-in-time snapshot. So if I go and I say File, Save, and I now save that document, well, again, if I go back and I do my refresh all, what you'll see happen is you'll see, bang, that has now just been replaced back to the correct version of the information from the system, all right? So again, security is one of those things which, before we do anything in the application, the first thing we contemplate is what is the security impact of this, and we make sure we address that for you. So, there you have it. I'm just going to say save, and that's an example of a generic inquiry. Couple of other things that I wanted to take you through as well is you can extend out the functionality of Acumatica yourself utilizing any application that you like. I'm going to give you a specific example here right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to close down my Acumatica system in Google Chrome, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to open up Internet Explorer. So here's my Internet Explorer, and what I want to do is I want to go and I want to open up Acumatica. So again, remember, all I need to know is that URL, p1.tryacumatica.com, and it's remembering that I've been to this site before. So I just press enter. There's my login. Put in my login and my password, and I'll choose to log in. Now, so I'm in. I'm looking at this with my Microsoft Excel. Sorry, with my Internet Explorer. I've got Excel on the brain. I told you I had that sign above my head saying spreadsheets are my life. So I'm now looking at this in Internet Explorer. Now, at Acumatica, we actually use SharePoint. So, and that's part of Office 365, which is Microsoft's web-based version, subscription-based version of Microsoft Office. So, in order for me to log on to my SharePoint site, I need to go to an address, acumatica.sharepoint.com, and I'll press enter. And the system then logs me on because it knows that I have got some saved credentials in here. But that's two different systems. Yeah? What if I want to link the two together? Well, the good news is I can take any functionality that's available to me here in SharePoint or any other web-based application for that matter, and I can plug it into my Acumatica system. Let's take a look at one other piece of software that I use. To manage my social media, I use a piece of software called Hootsuite. So that's at www.hootsuite.com. And so there it is, my social media management, and I can sign in, and I'll sign in with my username. One of the things that you can do with applications is you can use a technique called single sign-on so that you don't have to remember all of these different usernames and passwords. If your username is the same in one, you can use that across all of those different applications. Well, guess what? Acumatica supports that functionality. We can give you single sign-on using your Google ID or single sign-on using your Office 365 ID. So this whole process of sitting there scratching your head going, well, which password is it? Well, you don't have to worry about that because you can take advantage of that single sign-on capability. So there it is. There's all my information, all the different things that I'm following. These are all the people who come in my home feed. These are all the tweets that I've sent out because I'm using Twitter. I'm following a Twitter hashtag about Acumatica, and you can see there's lots of people talking about Acumatica, even people outside our ecosystem writing blog posts and sharing information about how to work with Acumatica. So there's a very rich, diverse community of people that you'll be joining when you become an Acumatica customer. So important to bear that in mind. Wouldn't it be great if I could just access them all from inside Acumatica? Well, good news is, funnily enough, you can. All you need to know is the URL for the application. So I'm just going to copy that URL. And then if I go into Acumatica, again, I'm going to show you some customization. So I go to System, Customization. So I want to add this into my sitemap. All right, so I'll go here and I'll choose sitemap. So now here is my sitemap, and you can see organization, finance, distribution, all those things across the top. So what I can do is I can add a new entry into my sitemap. So I'll go in here and I'll say, I'll give it a screen ID. So I'm going to call this EA for external applications 000000 because that's the top level. All right. And I'm going to call this external apps. And then all I need to do is just make sure I follow what's happening above here. So put in the same information. So I put in a tilde, /frames, or of course, I could cut and paste, but don't forget, I've got my URL for my website that I want to incorporate into Acumatica. I've got that sitting there in my cut and paste. So I go .aspx, and that's done, and then I'll hit save. So, what now happens? Guess what? Here it is. External apps is automatically now here in the system. Now I actually want to move that up a little bit. I want to move that before my help screen. So again, I just use my up arrow there. I'll hit save. And it's now there before my help. So that's great. I've now got external apps, but it's still not showing up the application. So what do I need to do? Just the same as I've got these options here in my sitemap, under organization, for example, you'll see I've then got my next level, customer management, projects, and so on. And these always point to this particular file location. So I'm going to do the same thing here. So I go to my external apps, and I want to create another link. So I'm going to make this is my external apps 000001. And I'm going to say, well, these are my social media apps. Social media apps. And same scenario. Okay, I put my tilde, /frames, /default.aspx. And then I hit save. So now, if you look here under external apps, you'll now see I have an option called social media apps. Let's add one more, and I'll make this EA 000002, and I'm going to call this one collaboration apps. Same scenario, tilde, tilde, /frames, /default.aspx, and I'll hit save. Okay, so now under external apps, I've got two choices, social media apps and collaboration apps. Okay, so I've now got these two choices here. So then the next step is under my social media apps. This is where I actually want to add my page. All right, so following me so far? Again, that's the great thing about video. You can forwards, backwards, and don't forget at any point in time you can also click on the Ask a Question button and you can send through questions about what you're seeing here, and we'll be more than happy to answer those. But anyway, so here it is. Here's my social media app. So I can now see that's down here. And so under this is where I actually want to add the URL. So I'll add a row, and I'll make this external apps 000100, and I'll give it a title. So this will be Hootsuite. Okay, I can give it a nice little icon that appears on the menu. So I can click here and I can pick any one of these little icons. So I've got one there that might represent my social media, or of course you can add your own icons into the system. So if I pick this one will do. Okay, I'll choose that. And then I put in my URL. So again, all I do here now is I paste in my URL, and then I hit save. And now under external apps, under social media apps, there it is. I've got Hootsuite. So now when people are running in the system, I'm sitting here, I'm doing my distribution, and I think it's time to go and see what's happening from a social media perspective. I go to external apps, I click on Hootsuite, and there it is. There's all my Hootsuite information embedded straight inside my Acumatica system. So you can see how quickly and easily you can expand out the Acumatica application to take into account all these other different solutions. Now, there are ways that you can even integrate information directly from these external applications straight into Acumatica. And I'm going to show you a few of those in some future demonstrations that'll give you the ability, for example, when somebody writes a tweet that mentions your company name, it will automatically recognize that that has happened and automatically create a new lead with a follow-up action for you inside Acumatica for you to go and reply to that tweet or whatever the case may be. So some incredible power there that's all facilitated by that automation. But with that brings my demonstration to a close. Again, I didn't want to spend time showing you how to do journal entries or how to do sales orders. We're going to go through that in detail in some of our later demonstrations. But I just wanted to give you an overview of how quick and easy it is to work inside the Acumatica application so that you can hopefully now make the decision that, yes, Acumatica is the solution that you would like to spend a little more time looking at, and you'd like to evaluate the Acumatica solution in more detail. So again, with that, I would like to thank you for taking the time to watch the demonstration. And now what I'd like to do is dive back in and let's wrap up by talking a little bit about Acumatica as an organization. Because hopefully by now you're thinking, well, that software looks pretty good. I understand what they've done. Who is this Acumatica organization? Let's talk a bit about that. All right. So hopefully now you've got a good understanding of what the Acumatica application looks like, what the user interface looks like, and what the power of a cloud-based enterprise resource planning solution is really all about. Not only do we deliver that core functionality that I've just taken you through, but we have this technology layer which the application has been built on top of, and that allows you to then extend the application. Again, this is what we talk about when we say playing to your strengths. So let's look at what the Acumatica stack is. And all the enterprise resource planning vendors, all technology vendors, they love to talk about these things called a stack. But that's because that's what they are. They are components stacked on top of one another. So with Acumatica, when we started building the product back in 2007, we focused on building the Acumatica cloud platform first. This was really effectively all of the engine that allowed us to build the ERP product that you've just seen. These were the components that gave us the ability to do things like single sign-on, to handle what we call multi-tenant, which allows you to securely share the same public cloud infrastructure with other companies, driving down your total cost of ownership, but securely separating out your data from everybody else's. So there's no chance of anybody being able to access your information. Giving us these web-based user interfaces. I showed you that responsive design where as I moved the web browser, I changed the size of the web browser. You saw the screen automatically redraw itself. Well, that's part of the Acumatica stack. And then, of course, all of the, if you like, let's call it plumbing for want of a better term, underneath it that gives you the role-based access you saw with the dashboards. It gave you the business objects that we were able to inquire on with the generic inquiries, the cloud database functionality, the workflows, and so on and so forth. So that's really what the Acumatica cloud platform does. So on top of that, what you're seeing here, if you look at the right-hand side of your screen, you're basically seeing that we have these application suites, and that's what we've built with the cloud platform. This is the core functionality, distribution, customer management or CRM, accounting, project accounting, financials, and everything like that. But then we have what we call our integrated complementary solutions. Now, these are from organizations who have said, you know what, we're going to take that basic functionality that core functionality, not necessarily basic, but that core functionality that Acumatica delivers, and we're going to take it into a specific industry. We're going to take it into manufacturing, we're going to take it into service management, government contracting, or housing management, just some examples of some of our partners and what they've done with Acumatica. So we've got those components, but then on top of that we have, and by the way, those integrated complementary solutions, they are completely seamless. Basically, the application looks exactly the same. You don't see where Acumatica starts and ends and where that complementary solution that's fully integrated starts or ends, because they are integrated so seamlessly. But then sitting on top of that, we have what we call our connected complementary solutions. So these are products, for example, maybe you're using Evernote, maybe you're using Avalara for your sales tax, maybe you're using Savant warehouse management software, maybe you're using Magento as your e-commerce platform. Well, these are the products that all connect into Acumatica using our web-based UI or our web-based APIs or application programming interfaces, more commonly known these days as web services. So these products aren't built with the Acumatica product, but they do integrate very, very seamlessly using those web services interfaces. So they're all the different components that we have. So that's the stack. That's how all of these pieces come together. Now, the next question people kind of say is, well, that all looks great, but who is Acumatica, and why would I want to entrust the future of my business onto a product built by Acumatica? Well, Acumatica is the fastest growing cloud ERP company in the market today. We have more than 100 employees right around the world, and you can see some of the different areas in which we have a presence. Acumatica was founded in 2008 by a number of veterans, if you like, of the enterprise resource planning industry. John Howell, Sergey Belousov, and our Chief Technology Officer, Mike Shelkonigov. All people who came together back in the days when there was a product on the market called Solomon. And some of you may be familiar with that. Microsoft acquired that product. It's now called Dynamics SL. But all those guys came together back in that ecosystem. So they came together again in 2008 and decided to form Acumatica. The company is owned by the founders and by institutional investors such as Almaz Capital and Visma, who are a KKR company. For those of you who are interested in venture capital, you'll know KKR is quite a well-known venture capital organization. Now, one of the things that makes this an interesting story, if you look at the map, you'll see that we have two logos there. One of them is a company called Visma, and the other one is a company called MYOB. Well, these companies, in and of themselves, are actually accounting software developers, enterprise resource planning software developers, with literally hundreds of thousands of customers running on a variety of different solutions. So what they did, they had a challenge. They said, we want to get to the cloud, but how do we get there quickly? How do we leapfrog the competition? How do we really get a head start? So they did their due diligence in deciding, was there a product out there that they could build on to get to where they needed to be, to take their customer base to the cloud quickly. And they decided on Acumatica. So those organizations, being very, very large companies, in some cases public companies, they did a significant amount of due diligence, probably more than you or I would ever do when we're selecting an enterprise resource planning product. But they decided to bet the future of their companies on Acumatica. So again, hopefully that gives you a feeling of confidence as you're thinking about Acumatica and whether or not you should be making a decision to run your business on our technology. When we talk about being the fastest growing cloud ERP company, well, what does that basically mean? Well, our 2013 channel partner growth was more than 200%. So, our channel grew. Our customer base grew by more than 250%, and our billed revenue growth was more than 350%. Why do I talk about these things? Well, these things are important because it shows you that more and more organizations just like yours are choosing an Acumatica solution for their business. So you'll be in good company. You'll be in the company of some leading technology companies that I already talked about, Visma and MYOB. And here's some statistics about those organizations. They provide us with the ability to deliver strong leadership, solid development, because not only do we have our own development teams, but the developers inside those organizations also collaborate with Acumatica. So we get a multiplier effect as a result of having those organizations to work with. And then, of course, what we're providing that they are building on and we're building on together is our forward-looking cloud technology. So all of these things hopefully come together to give you that feeling of confidence about what Acumatica is doing and what we're focused on. Now, if you need a little bit more external validation, so here is from Nucleus Research, an analyst company. Here is how they've looked at the enterprise resource planning market. And they've built this thing called the ERP value matrix, which is based on functionality and usability. We first appeared on this matrix in the facilitator quadrant when we first got going. But in just 1 year, we've advanced towards the leader quadrant. So Nucleus are giving us their not necessarily seal of approval, but as they rated and ranked different vendors against these different areas, you can see Acumatica stacks up very well. And you can see here's a comment from Rebecca Wetterman, who's one of their research analysts. As a matter of fact, their vice president of research. And she said, even though Acumatica is a relatively new player in the space, the high usability and solid functionality do make it a compelling choice for people to look at. So hopefully you're feeling that it is a compelling choice for you to look at. So not only do the folks at Nucleus Research think that Acumatica is a great solution, but other organizations as well. People like Ray Wang from Enterprise Irregulars, now Constellation Research, John Reed from Diginomica, and Heather Clancy, who writes for ZDNet, have all been very complimentary, not only about our partner program, but also about the results that we're getting by working with companies just like you and helping you unlock your business potential. So then, what are some of the other things to be aware of with Acumatica? Well, because Acumatica is focused on delivering on the best of the technology that's available, we've also got a number of key partnerships. The Acumatica public cloud, our software as a service delivery, is all facilitated and powered through Amazon Web Services. And Amazon, as you're probably aware, is the biggest provider of cloud services in the world. So we're working very, very closely with them, and our solutions are deployed on their cloud centers all around the world. IBM recently started up their IBM Cloud Marketplace, and we're pleased to say and proud to say that Acumatica is the first cloud ERP product on that cloud marketplace with IBM. And of course, Acumatica was also one of the very first products on Microsoft's cloud platform, which is called Azure. But it all comes down to the kinds of organizations who are utilizing Acumatica. And just recently at our Partner Summit, we announced our 1,000th customer. And this is an organization from Colorado called Sunshare. But you can see the customer growth trajectory is very, very strong. Why do we talk about this? Because again, it's an indication that organizations just like yours are looking at Acumatica, as hopefully you are, and making a decision to go with our solution. And organizations of all different shapes and sizes in all kinds of different industries, from wholesale and distribution through to professional services, publishing, and a number of other different areas as well. So not only did we just announce our 1,000th customer, but that organization joins quite a substantial list of existing organizations, some with brands you'll recognize and some with brands that you may not. So we have a large number of organizations in a whole range of different industries, from professional services through to food and beverage, travel and hospitality. And those organizations are not only publicly traded, as you can see here, but a huge number of privately owned companies as well who are utilizing the Acumatica solution to help them run their businesses more effectively. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about some of the awards and the recognition that Acumatica's solution has been recognized with. Things like our partner program has been recognized by Computer Reseller News as being one of the leading partner programs in the market. We've just recently won a Cody Award for the best supply chain solution, and we've just recently won a Stevie Award, which are awards that are given out to American businesses in a range of different categories. So I'd encourage you to go and take a look at our website if you want to know more about these awards, what the criteria were for winning the awards, and then how does it relate back to you. But I think the important message to take away from this is that not only are other customers acknowledging that Acumatica is a great solution, but the industry is acknowledging that Acumatica has a great solution as well. One of the important things, though, that I would like to talk about is how important our partner ecosystem is to Acumatica and why partners add so much value for you as a customer utilizing the Acumatica solution. It's very, very difficult for any organization to truly be able to deliver specifically on your requirements if all of their mechanism is around delivering these things as direct services, direct sales. One of the things that we believe at Acumatica is that to truly deliver for a small or mid-sized business against the vision that you have for how you want to unlock your business potential, the vision that you have for how the software needs to help you address your particular business pain points, and mapping your vision through to the software's capabilities. In order to do that effectively, you really require a partner. And that's where we have our product sold exclusively through certified and qualified partners all around the world. Those partners provide you with the dedicated support and attention that you need. We then support those partners as well. We have independent software vendors who deliver additional solutions, as I talked about before, those complementary solutions they deliver on top of our platform. But for those customers and partners who want to do so, we also have a direct support offering. And that direct support offering gives you as a customer the ability to get support directly from Acumatica, but that is delivered and facilitated by your Acumatica partner. So the partner channel is absolutely critical to making sure that we can deliver our products and our solutions successfully for you, our customers. So that brings us to the end of today's presentation. What I'd like to do is let you know that if you have any questions, you'll notice on the player that you're seeing this video in, there's an option there to ask a question. So if you've got any questions, please click on that button. Feel free to put in the details of the question, and that will be sent through to somebody who can address that question for you. You'll also notice that as you hover over the player, you have an option to share this presentation with others. So if there are other people inside your organization who you think would benefit from watching this presentation as well, feel free to use those share functions that are in the player there for you. One click is all it takes, and it'll be forwarded to them, and they'll be able to see exactly what you have just seen, and you'll be able to discuss with them the Acumatica solution. So with that, again, on behalf of Acumatica and all of our partners, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to view today's presentation, and we look forward to having the opportunity to help you unlock your business potential. Thank you.